Karlson and the Great Chocolate Cake Heist. One breezy afternoon, Benny was happily finishing his art project, a collage of animals from all around the world. He had his markers, glitter, and glue stick spread out over his table when suddenly, clunk, crash. Karlson, the chubby little man with a propeller on his back, landed right on Benny's windowsill. Benny looked up, sighing with a grin. "What are you doing here, Karlson?" Karlson gave him a mischievous smile, his cheeks a bit flushed from flying. "Benny, I heard rumors, yes, rumors of the most spectacular chocolate cake in the world." Benny raised an eyebrow. "A cake? Really?" "Yes, but not just any cake, Benny. This is the cake. It's the legendary chocolate cake that Mrs. Pumpernickel bakes every year for the town's cake festival. It's supposed to be the richest, fudgiest, most chocolatey cake in the world." Karlson's eyes sparkled as he spoke, and Benny knew exactly what that look meant. "Oh no, Karlson. Don't tell me you're going to try and steal the cake." Karlson gasped dramatically. "Steal? Benny, I'm merely planning a heroic taste test on behalf of the public. After all, someone has to make sure it's as good as they say." Benny couldn't help but laugh. He knew better than to argue with Karlson once he had an idea in his head. "Fine," he said, rolling his eyes. "Let's go check out the cake festival." With that, Benny climbed on Karlson's back, and with a loud whir, they flew out of the window and soared above the rooftops toward the town square, where the festival was in full swing. Colorful banners flapped in the wind, the scent of freshly baked pastries filled the air, and stalls lined the square, each displaying every kind of sweet treat imaginable. But the centerpiece of it all was a towering chocolate cake, almost as tall as Karlson himself, displayed on a pedestal under a glass dome. Karlson's eyes went wide. "Benny, it's glorious," he whispered, practically drooling. "I can already taste the chocolate." As they approached the cake, they noticed Mrs. Pumpernickel standing guard. She was known around town as a fierce protector of her pastries. The cake festival was her big moment, and no one dared mess with her creations. She even had her dog, Fong, a tiny Pomeranian with a big attitude, standing by her side. "Okay, Karlson," whispered Benny. "How are you going to get close to the cake without Mrs. Pumpernickel or Fong spotting you?" Karlson put his hands on his hips, a confident smile spreading across his face. "Benny, my boy, I have a plan that's foolproof. But first, we need disguises." He zoomed off toward a nearby stall, grabbing 2 large sun hats and a pair of sunglasses. He plopped a hat and glasses onto Benny, then adjusted his own. "Now, we blend in like normal cake enthusiasts." Benny sighed but went along with it. The two of them sidled up to the cake pedestal, trying their best to look casual. But as they got closer, Karlson's excitement got the better of him. He stretched out a chubby hand, reaching under the glass dome, and was just about to pinch a piece of icing when, ruff! Fong had spotted them. "Scram!" Mrs. Pumpernickel yelled, waving a wooden spoon like a sword. "No one touches my cake until the judging." Karlson yelped, quickly retracting his hand. Sorry, ma'am. Just admiring your work." They scurried back, but Karlson wasn't about to give up that easily. "Plan B," he whispered to Benny. "We'll need something sneakier." They ducked behind a cotton candy cart to devise their next move. "All right, Benny, here's the plan. I'll distract Fong, and you sneak up and grab just a tiny piece of that cake." "Why do I have to be the one to grab it?" Benny protested. Isn't this your idea? Karlson shrugged. You're smaller, it's simple physics. Besides, heroes work together, remember? Benny sighed but agreed. He crept up to the pedestal, inching closer and closer. Meanwhile, Karlson flew a few feet off the ground, holding out a juicy sausage he'd picked up from another stall. Fong's nose twitched, and he zoomed over to Karlson, barking excitedly. Hey, Fong! Want a sausage? Karlson called, waving the sausage in the air. Fong leaped up, trying to snatch it out of his hand, and Karlson pulled it just out of reach, laughing. Fong barked louder, jumping up and down in a frenzy. With Fong distracted, Benny finally made it to the cake. He reached under the glass, pinching the tiniest piece of chocolate icing. But just as he was about to back away, a loud sneeze echoed across the square. Achoo! Benny's sneeze shook the glass dome, and with a loud thud, it toppled over and crashed onto the ground. Silence fell across the festival as everyone turned to stare. Mrs. Pumpernickel's face went red as she glared at Benny and Karlson, who had dropped the sausage in shock. You two troublemakers, she bellowed. What have you done to my cake? Before Benny could even begin to explain, Karlson swooped down, scooping him up and whisking him into the air. Time to make a speedy exit, he shouted. The two of them zipped above the crowd, with Mrs. Pumpernickel shaking her spoon at them from below. And don't come back until you learn some respect for baked goods, she hollered. When they finally reached Benny's room, Karlson collapsed onto the bed, laughing so hard he could barely catch his breath. Did you see her face? Classic. Benny couldn't help but laugh, too, even though his cheeks were bright red. I thought we were toast for sure. Toast with chocolate icing, Karlson quipped, wiping a tear from his eye. But did you get a taste? Benny held up his finger, which had the tiniest dab of icing on it. Just a bit. Karlson grinned. Well, that's enough for heroes like us. Besides, Mrs. Pumpernickel will be telling that story at the cake festival for years. And so, Karlson and Benny's great chocolate cake heist became legendary in the town, with the duo swearing to take on even more daring adventures in the future.